The flames were still crackling behind her when he arrived, silent, terrifyingly calm, eyes fixed not on the burning house, but on the small boy clinging to her shoulder. She expected gratitude. Instead, he stepped closer, voice low and certain, like it was already decided. You saved my son. That means you're mine now. Before we go any deeper, go ahead and hit subscribe. We tell thrilling stories every single day, and you definitely don't want to miss tomorrow's. She froze. What did mine mean to a man like him? The fluorescent lights had been buzzing for 14 hours straight, or maybe that was just the ringing in Ella's skull. She couldn't remember her last real meal. A stale granola bar from the third-floor vending machine around hour 9. Lukewarm coffee that tasted like burnt regret around hour 12. Her scrubs clung to her skin, damp with the sweat of too many codes, too many families she'd watched collapse in waiting rooms. 26 years old, and she was already forgetting what it felt like to not be tired. The locker room was empty. Everyone else had clocked out hours ago, back when the shift was supposed to end. Ella peeled off her scrubs like shedding dead skin, her fingers fumbling with the locker combination twice before it clicked. Jeans, black hoodie, faded gray at the elbows. The November cold had already seeped into the building's bones. Her 2005 Honda Civic waited in the back lot like a faithful dog with arthritis. It coughed to life on the second try, dashboard lights flickering weakly. 10:47 p.m. The eviction notice was still taped to her apartment door. She'd seen it this morning. Bright orange, impossible to miss. Final warning, 48 hours, 2 weeks late on rent, again. The main route home added 15 minutes. 15 minutes she didn't have. 15 minutes she couldn't afford to give tonight. The back roads would shave that off. Sure, cell service died 3 miles in. Sure, the woods swallowed streetlights and spit out nothing but shadows. Sure, nobody with common sense drove those twisting hills after dark. But Ella's common sense had clocked out around hour 6. She turned onto Blackwood Pass at 10:52 p.m. The storm hit like a fist. Rain didn't fall. It attacked, hammering the windshield so hard the wipers could barely keep pace. The road narrowed, trees pressing in from both sides, branches clawing at the dark. No streetlights out here. No other cars. Just Ella in the storm, and the road that kept curving deeper into nothing. Then, smoke. Not wood smoke, not fireplace cozy. This was chemical, acrid, wrong. Her foot slammed the brake before her brain caught up. 50 yards ahead, flames erupted from a mansion that shouldn't exist. A sprawling estate hidden in the woods, windows exploding one by one like dying stars. Fire twisted against the rain, alive and furious, black smoke billowing into the storm. Every instinct screamed, drive, away, now. Call 911, sure, but this wasn't her problem. Not her equipment, not her jurisdiction. She'd left her volunteer firefighter days behind when the department's funding dried up and she couldn't afford to keep a scream, high, desperate, young, a child. Ella was out of the car before she made the decision to move. Her volunteer kit was in the trunk, barely regulation, mostly scavenged after the station closed. She grabbed it anyway, flashlight in her teeth, fire extinguisher under one arm. The heat hit her like a wall 30 feet from the building. The front door was already collapsing inward, frame warping, paint bubbling. No one was outside. No fire trucks, no sirens. Just that scream, coming from upstairs, muffled but unmistakable. A boy, maybe 5, trapped. She didn't think. Thinking would have stopped her. Side window, she smashed it with the extinguisher base, glass spraying inward, a shard kissing her knuckle deep enough to bleed. She climbed through, boots crunching on shattered glass. Inside was hell, smoke thick enough to choke on, flames climbing the walls like living things, heat pressing down, stealing oxygen. The stairs groaned under her weight but held, barely. Second floor. Hallway consumed by black smoke. She dropped low, crawling, following the sound of crying. Third door, locked. She kicked it in. The boy was under the bed, curled into a ball so tight she almost missed him. Soot-covered, shaking, eyes squeezed shut. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice came out raw. "I've got you." He didn't move, frozen in terror. Behind her, something cracked, loud as a gunshot. The ceiling beam above the stairs sagged, sparks raining down. No time. She grabbed him, wrapped him in her red coat, curled her body around his. 15 seconds to the stairs. 10 seconds down. 5 seconds to the window. The ceiling caved in behind them with a roar that shook her bones as they tumbled out into the rain. Ella taking the fall on her back and shoulder, the boy clutched against her chest. Her lungs screamed, her shoulders shrieked. But the kid was breathing. She stumbled to her car through the downpour, the boy clinging to her like a lifeline. His pulse hammered against her ribs, fast but steady. No rattling breath, no major bleeding, bruises on his arms, cuts on his cheeks, but alive, miraculously, impossibly alive. She lowered him into the passenger seat, draped her coat over his shivering frame. He stared up at her with eyes too calm for a child who'd just escaped death. Light brown, almost gold in the firelight. Her phone was already in her hand, punching 911, when he spoke. His voice was barely a whisper, soft as a secret. "Luca," he breathed, tiny fingers curling into her sleeve. "My name is Luca Burton." A pause, then softer. "Daddy's coming." Burton. The name landed like a punch. Even out here in the suburbs, people knew that name. People feared that name. Mark Burton didn't run Boston. He owned it. The parts that didn't show up on maps. The kinds of things that happened in dark rooms with locked doors. People who crossed Mark Burton didn't get arrested. They disappeared. Ella's mouth went dry. Headlights carved through the rain. 3 black SUVs sliding into formation with military precision. Doors opened in perfect unison. 6 men stepped out, dark coats slick with rain, moving like shadows with intent. The tallest one approached. Granite face, dead eyes. "Miss Brown." His voice was flat, empty of inflection. "The boss wants to see you. Now." Her heart kicked against her ribs. "How do you know my—" "Now." She stood, Luca still pressed against her side. "He can thank me later. This kid needs a hospital." "He'll get one." The man's eyes flicked to the inferno behind them, then back. "After." It wasn't a request. 2 men flanked her, not touching, not forcing, but the message was crystal clear. She could walk or she could be carried. Her choice. Luca climbed into the middle SUV without hesitation, like this was normal. Like strange men in expensive coats showing up after fires was just another Tuesday. Ella followed because leaving a 5-year-old alone with the armed strangers felt worse than whatever waited ahead. The door closed behind her with a sound like a vault ceiling. If that chill just crept up your spine, hit like, you're not alone in this storm. Subscribe because Ella just walked into a world that doesn't let people leave. Comment 1 word, run or stay. The SUV is already moving, and turning back isn't an option anymore. 43 minutes of silence. The SUV's leather seats smelled like expensive cologne and something metallic Ella didn't want to name. Luca sat between her and one of the stone-faced guards, humming softly, swinging his legs like they were heading to Disneyland instead of wherever this was. No one spoke. No radio, just the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the drum of rain on the roof. They passed through gates that opened without anyone touching them. Cameras tracked their approach. The estate beyond made the burned mansion look like a starter home, sprawling, lit like a fortress, surrounded by manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than Ella made in a year. The SUV stopped under a covered portico. The door opened. "This way." Inside, the air changed. Leather, old wood, the faint bite of cigar smoke. Oil paintings lined the hallway, the kind you see roped off in museums. Her wet sneakers squeaked on marble floors. They led her to a study where a fire crackled in a hearth big enough to stand in. A man stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, shoulders perfectly square in a black coat still damp from rain. He didn't turn, didn't speak. Luca ran to him. "Daddy!" The man knelt, movement precise, controlled, and pressed a kiss to the boy's forehead. His eyes closed for just a moment, something cracking in the stillness of his face. Then he looked up at Ella. Mark Burton had eyes the same light brown as his son's, but there was nothing warm in them. They were calculating, cold. The eyes of a man who'd seen too much and felt too little. He stood slowly, brushing soot from Luca's hair, never breaking eye contact with her. "You pulled my son out of hell tonight." His voice was low, almost soft, dangerous in its gentleness. "Name your price." Ella's throat felt lined with sandpaper. "I don't want money." One eyebrow lifted, barely. Everyone wants money. "I want to go home." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the fire's crackle and Luca's quiet breathing. Mark studied her like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. Then he smiled, barely, just a ghost of movement at the corner of his mouth. "You saved my blood." He took a step closer. "That binds you to me now. Debts like this don't get paid, Miss Brown." He took another step. "They get carried." "I didn't ask to carry anything." "You don't get to choose." He nodded toward the door. "My men will take you home. From now on, they will stay close. For your protection." The word tasted like a threat wrapped in silk. "I don't need—" "You do." His voice hardened, just a fraction. "The people who burned my house tonight, they know you pulled Luca out. They know your face, your name, where you live." Ice slid down her spine. "So here's how this works." Mark buttoned his coat, movements precise. "You go home, you live your life, and my men make sure you wake up tomorrow to do it again." His eyes locked on hers, non-negotiable. 3 hours later, Ella stood in her apartment as gray dawn bled through the blinds. 2 black SUVs sat across the street, engines idling. Her door had a new lock she hadn't installed, heavy deadbolt, the kind that said, "expensive and serious." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Sleep well, Miss Brown. You're safe now." She stared at the message until the screen went dark. Safe, that wasn't the word she'd use. Trapped felt closer. If you felt that cage door close. Hit like misery loves company. Subscribe because Ella just became Mark Burton's property and doesn't even know the price tag yet. Comment. Protected or prisoner. Those SUVs aren't leaving, and neither are we. Boston General didn't know what to make of Ella's new accessories. She walked into the ER at 6:47 a.m., coffee in one hand, badge clipped to her scrubs, and 2 men in charcoal suits followed 3 steps behind, earpieces glinting under fluorescent lights. Nurse Ramirez's jaw dropped. "Girl, who are they?" "Long story." "Those aren't boyfriends." Ramirez's eyes went wide. "Those are problems in Armani." By lunch, the entire floor knew. Someone snapped a photo, Ella at the nurse's station, the 2 guards flanking her like Secret Service, and posted it to the group chat. Caption, "Ella upgraded. Who is she dating, the president?" Her phone exploded. 12 texts, 4 missed calls. She wanted to crawl into a supply closet and die. That night, a black gift box waited on her doorstep. Crimson ribbon. No card. Inside, a diamond bracelet cold enough to burn. A note in sharp, slanted handwriting. "Wear it or don't. Either way, you outshine any stone." She shoved it in a drawer and triple-locked the door. Didn't help. She could feel the guards outside, hear their footsteps, see their shadows crossing her window when headlights swept by. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by orange flames and a little boy's whisper. "Daddy's coming." Friday, Luca appeared. Pediatric ward, 2:14 p.m. Ella was charting meds when she heard the commotion. Nurses cooing, footsteps squeaking on linoleum. She looked up. Luca ran straight to her, arms wide, face lighting up like she'd hung the moon. "Ella!" He slammed into her legs hard enough to make her stumble. Tiny arms wrapped around her knees, squeezing tight. "I told Daddy, you're my angel." Every nurse within 20 feet melted. Ramirez mouthed, "Oh my God," from across the station. Ella crouched, heart doing something complicated in her chest. "Hey, buddy, are you feeling okay?" Luca nodded, solemn. "Daddy said I can visit you anytime. He said you saved me, so now you're family." Family. The words stuck in her throat like glass. Mark arrived 10 minutes later. He filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat that probably cost more than her car. Every head turned. Conversations died. He crossed the room in silence, gaze locked on Luca, who'd climbed into Ella's lap and was chattering about fire trucks and Batman. For the first time, Mark's mask cracked. He knelt beside them, and when he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I was in New York." His hand trembled as it brushed Luca's hair. 1 hour away, 1 hour, and I almost lost everything that matters. His eyes lifted to Ella, raw, stripped bare. "You gave him back to me." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to repay that." Ella's voice came out softer than she meant. "Let me live my life. That's repayment." Something flickered across his face. Hunger, regret, something she couldn't name. "Can't do that." His jaw tightened. "Not while people are still trying to finish what they started." He stood, composure sliding back like armor. The gifts kept coming. Saturday, a cashmere scarf, gray as smoke, softer than anything she'd ever owned. Sunday, a first-edition nursing textbook she'd mentioned once in passing to Ramirez 3 months ago. Each package ended the same way. "You're under my protection. Stop fighting it. M." By Monday, Luca was drawing crayon pictures of the three of them, stick figures holding hands in front of a house that definitely wasn't on fire. And every night, the SUVs never left. Day 10, the driver took a different route. Ella noticed immediately. They passed the hospital exit, kept going toward the industrial district where buildings had broken windows and for sale signs older than she was. "This isn't... Boss wants to see you." The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Now." Her stomach dropped. They stopped at a warehouse that smelled like salt and rust. Mark waited outside, coat whipping in the wind off the harbor. No Luca, no smile. "Get in." Not a request. Inside, men stood around a steel table covered in photographs. The burned mansion, charred beams, a teddy bear melted into ash. And, Ella's breath caught, a security still of her, grainy and dark, running from the flames with Luca in her arms. Mark's hand slammed down on the table. "The Russos torched my house." His voice was level, controlled, but the photos trembled under his palm. "Thought they'd take my son while I was out of town." He looked up. His eyes were black. They missed. Now they're angry. Ella's pulse hammered in her ears. "You said it was an accident." "I said what kept you breathing." That night, the SUVs multiplied. 4 now. All armed, she caught glimpses of shoulder holsters when jackets shifted. At the hospital, Derek started appearing. Mark's right-hand man had eyes like winter pavement and a smile that never reached them. He leaned against vending machines, stood outside patient rooms. Once she looked up from coding a patient and saw him watching through the ICU glass, face expressionless. When she asked Mark, he only said, "Derek protects what's mine." Mine. The late-night visitors started 2 days later. Ella woke at 2:17 a.m. to tires crunching gravel outside. She cracked the blinds, Mark's Escalade, doors open, men unloading crates stamped with Cyrillic lettering. Another night, a black sedan idled below while 2 men argued in rapid Italian, hands slicing the air. One passed Mark a flash drive. Mark glanced up. Straight at her window, their eyes locked across the darkness. He didn't look away until she did. Texts arrived in code. Unknown. Red fox sleeps at dawn. Unknown. Swan flies north. Burn after reading. She deleted every one, heart racing. Friday, Derek cornered her in the parking garage. Convenient timing. His voice was silk over steel. "You show up right when the Russos strike. Pull a kid out like some hero." He stepped closer. "Mark trusts too easily. I don't." Ella's back hit concrete. "I'm a nurse, not a spy." "Funny." He smiled without warmth. "Russos have nurses too." His finger flickered her ID badge. "Keep your stories straight, sweetheart." That night, Mark appeared at her door himself. Sleeves rolled, knuckles bruised. He brushed past her without asking, poured scotch, downed it, poured again. "Derek talks too much." He set the glass down hard enough to crack it. "The Russos want war. They'll use anything, anyone to get it." His gaze pinned her to the wall. including you. Ella's voice shook. Then let me disappear. New city, new name. Mark's laugh was bitter. They'd find you in 48 hours. He stepped close, voice dropping. And I'd burn the world to get you back. Another step. You're in this now, Ella. Stop pretending the door's still open. Thunder rolled outside. Her phone buzzed. Unknown. Little bird sings tonight. Midnight. Pier 19. She deleted it. Mark watched her do it, jaw tight. Smart girl, he murmured. But his eyes said something else entirely. If Derek just made your skin crawl, hit like. He's watching us too. Subscribe because the Russos are circling and Ella's caught in the middle. Comment. Trust Mark or trust no one. The war is coming and blood doesn't wash off easy. Ella never saw it coming. One moment she was fumbling with her apartment key, grocery bags cutting circulation to her fingers, thinking about the leftover Thai food waiting in her fridge. The next, darkness. A hood slammed over her head, chemical sweet cloth pressed to her mouth and nose. She tried to scream, but her lungs were already shutting down, vision tunneling to a pinpoint, then nothing. No, 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 no. Gone. Slam cut to cold concrete against her cheek. Ella's eyes cracked open to swimming vision and a taste like battery acid. Her head pounded. Wrists screamed, zip tied behind her back, plastic biting into skin. She was in a chair, metal, bolted to the floor. The room smelled like smoke and decay. The mansion. They'd brought her back to the ruins. Moonlight spilled through the collapsed ceiling, illuminating charred beams and melted furniture. This was the room where she'd found Luca, where the ceiling had caved in, where she'd almost died. Footsteps echoed. She looked up. Derek stood 10 feet away, rolling up crisp white sleeves, like a surgeon prepping for an operation. Hello, Angel. Ella's breath came short. What is this? Overdue conversation. He circled her slowly, hands clasped behind his back. See, you show up out of nowhere, right when the Russos attack. Pull the kid out like you knew exactly where he'd be. I heard him screaming. Funny, Derek stopped in front of her. Fire that loud, smoke that thick. And you heard a 5-year-old 2 floors up? His hand moved faster than she could track, open palm across her face, sharp and vicious. Pain exploded. Copper flooded her mouth. Let's try again. His voice stayed pleasant. Who's your handler? Russo safe houses, drop points, names. I don't. Another slap. Harder. Her head snapped sideways, ears ringing. Wrong answer. I don't know anything. Her voice cracked. I'm a nurse. His fist drove into her ribs. Air exploded from her lungs. The chair tipped, crashed sideways. Her shoulder hit concrete, white-hot pain shooting down her arm. Derek crouched beside her, grabbing a fistful of her hair, wrenching her head back. You're either a spy or the unluckiest woman in Boston. His breath was hot against her ear. Either way, Mark doesn't need the liability. He let go. She collapsed, gasping, Last chance, Angel. Talk or I start breaking things that don't heal. Ella tasted blood and smoke and terror. I don't know anything. Derek sighed. Shame. He pulled a knife from his belt. 6 inches of cold steel that caught the moonlight. Let's start with fingers. You're a nurse. You only need a few, right? The door exploded inward, not opened. Exploded. Wood shrapnel sprayed across the room. Derek spun, knife raised. Mark stood in the smoking doorway, gun extended, face carved from winter itself. Step away from her. His voice was so cold the temperature dropped. Derek actually smiled. Boss, she's compromised. We do this clean. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Derek's knee shattered in a red mist. He hit the ground screaming, hands clutching the ruined joint, blood pumping between his fingers. Silence fell, just Derek's wet gasps and the distant drip of rain through charred beams. Mark walked forward, steps measured, gun never wavering. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. I told you to step away. She'll get you killed. Derek choked on blood. She's a plant. If she wanted me dead. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. I'd already be in the ground. He knelt beside Ella, produced a knife, sliced through the zip ties with surgical precision. The plastic fell away. You okay? She managed a nod, but her hands were shaking so hard she couldn't stand. Mark caught her before she fell, one arm around her waist, the other pressing her face to his shoulder so she wouldn't see Derek bleeding out on the floor. I've got you. His hand cradled the back of her head, gentle in a way that didn't match the violence still echoing in the room. He turned to Derek and his voice went dead. Touch her again and I take the other leg. A pause, then your tongue, then things you'll miss more. Derek spat blood. You're choosing a nurse over family? Over the business? I'm choosing the woman who saved my son. Mark's grip on Ella tightened. Twice, while you were where exactly? Derek had no answer. Mark lifted Ella like she weighed nothing and carried her out past fire-scarred walls into moonlight that felt like salvation. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. In the SUV, he wrapped his coat around her, fingers impossibly gentle on the bruises already blooming across her cheek. I should have killed him slower. Don't. Her voice came out broken. Don't become a monster for me. His eyes met hers, raw, stripped of every defense. Too late. His thumb brushed her split lip, feather light. I crossed that line the night you pulled Luca from the flames. His forehead pressed to hers. You're not a debt anymore, Ella. His voice cracked. You're the only thing keeping me human. She should have pulled away. She should have run. Instead, her hand found his, fingers threading through blood and soot and something that felt dangerously like trust. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Inside the tinted cocoon, Mark's breath was warm against her temple. I'm sorry, he whispered, but I'm never letting you go. If that never letting you go just stopped your heart, smash that like button. We're all trapped in this SUV with them, and subscribe because Derek's bleeding out and Mark just chose Ella over his empire. Comment, one word, monster or hero. The line just got blurred and there's blood on both sides. 72 hours later. The lights died at 11:47 p.m., not flickering, not dimming, just gone. Every bulb, every screen, every security camera across the rebuilt mansion went black in perfect unison. Ella was in the library, curled in an armchair with a medical journal she wasn't really reading. The sudden darkness hit like a physical blow. Backup generators should have kicked in. They didn't. Someone cut them. Her nursing instincts screamed before her brain caught up. Luca. She was already moving, 3 doors down. She'd memorized the layout the night she ran through fire. Muscle memory painted in smoke and fear. Her bare feet were silent on cold marble. Luca's room glowed faintly, his rocket ship nightlight still running on batteries, a small mercy in the dark. He was sitting up in bed, eyes wide, clutching his stuffed elephant. Ella? A terrified whisper. She pressed a finger to her lips. Hide and seek, buddy. Bad guy version. Remember the wine cellar? He nodded, solemn. Gunfire cracked outside. Pop, pop, pop. Military bursts, controlled, professional. Glass shattered downstairs. Men shouted in Italian. Ella scooped Luca up, his arms locking around her neck. We're gonna win this round, okay? But you have to be quiet as a mouse. Quiet as space, he whispered back. The servant's staircase was hidden behind a false panel in the east wing. Mark had shown her during the security briefing she'd sat through 3 days ago, half listening, thinking she'd never need it. Wrong. She flew down the narrow stairs, Luca's heartbeat hammering against her collarbone. The 7th step creaked. She remembered, stepped over it without thinking. Bootsteps thundered above them. Flashlight beams sliced through the darkness. Trevarley! Find them! The wine cellar door was hidden behind a rack of 1920s Bordeaux. She yanked it open, slipped inside, pulled the rack shut just as light flooded the corridor. 3 Russo soldiers in tactical gear swept past, rifles raised. Luca buried his face in her shoulder. She could feel him shaking. We're ghosts, she breathed against his hair. They can't see ghosts. They came back. Bootsteps stopped outside the rack. Silence. Then, crash! The rack exploded inward, bottles shattering, wine spraying like blood. 3 men filled the doorway, backlit by flashlights. The first one lunged. Ella's hand closed around a 1926 Bordeaux. She swung it like a bat, all her terror and fury behind it. Glass exploded across his face. He dropped, screaming, hands clutching his ruined eyes. The second raised a pistol. Time slowed. Luca behind her. Can't let them. She threw herself sideways, tucking Luca beneath her. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Fire tore through her shoulder, white hot. Absolute. Blood bloomed hot and instant, soaking her shirt. But Luca was untouched. She grabbed the broken bottle's jagged neck and drove it into the shooter's thigh. Bone, muscle, deeper. He howled, went down. The third grabbed her hair, wrenched her head back. She twisted, slammed her elbow into his throat. Felt cartilage crunch, heard him choke. Luca screamed. She shoved him behind a wine crate. Turned back to the fight. The man pulled a knife. She didn't have time to be afraid. Just move. Details blur. Fists, knees, teeth when nothing else worked. The knife sliced across her ribs. She felt it, distant, like it was happening to someone else. Blood made the floor slippery. Her vision tunneled. Her hands found his throat and squeezed until he stopped moving. Silence. Just her ragged breathing and Luca's muffled sobs and the drip, drip, drip of wine and blood, mixing on stone. She barricaded the door with her body, Luca clutching her legs. You okay, buddy? You're bleeding. His voice was so small, just a little. She was bleeding a lot. I'm okay. We're okay. She didn't know if that was true. Minutes or hours later, time had stopped making sense. The lights flickered back on. Bootsteps, different rhythm, familiar. The door didn't open. It was torn off its hinges. Mark stood in the doorway, suit jacket gone, white shirt soaked with someone else's blood. Gun still in his hand. He took in the scene. 3 bodies. Blood painting the walls, Ella swaying on her feet, one arm around Luca, the other pressed to her shoulder where red seeped between her fingers. Her face ghost white, her eyes already starting to glaze. Mark's knees hit the floor. Ella! She tried to smile. Blood stained her teeth. Told you. I remember the layout. Her legs gave out. He caught her before she hit the ground, one arm scooping Luca up, the other cradling Ella against his chest. You saved him again. His voice cracked. You saved my son again. His grip tightened until it hurt. And now, I don't care what it takes. I don't care who I have to kill. You're mine. She should have fought those words. Instead, she sagged into him, darkness creeping in at the edges. Just get us out. He carried them both up through smoke and bodies, past his own men who wouldn't meet his eyes. Outside, dawn bled pink and gold across a lawn littered with Russo corpses. 15 bodies. Mark had painted the grounds red looking for Lopato. He never let go. The envelope arrived at 3:12 a.m. Ella was still in the hospital, her hospital, Boston General, because Mark had refused to take her anywhere else. You trust these people, he'd said. So I trust them. She was bandaged, shoulder throbbing under gauze and stitches, Luca asleep against her good side. Mark sat in the corner chair, tie loose, eyes bloodshot from 3 nights without sleep. He hadn't left since the cellar. Someone slid the manila envelope under the door. Ella saw it first, unmarked, thick, her stomach dropped. Mark. He crossed the room in 2 strides, picked it up like it might explode. Opened it carefully. Photos spilled out. Security stills, grainy, dark, but unmistakable. A man in a dark hoodie pouring accelerant along the mansion's east wing. The same man shaking hands with a Russo lieutenant outside a warehouse. The same man climbing into a car with Mark Burton's family crest on the plates. Mark went absolutely still. The face in the photos was younger than his. Same jaw, same build, same eyes. Victor, his brother. No. Ella's voice was barely a whisper. Mark, no. He crumpled the photos in his fist, knuckles white. He wanted the empire. Mark's voice was hollow, dead. Thought burning my son alive would break me, make me weak. He pulled out his phone. Victor dies tonight. Ella grabbed his wrist. Wait, he's your brother. He stopped being that. Mark's eyes were black holes. The second he lit the match under my son's bed, his finger was already dialing. Mark, please. He tried to murder Luca. His voice rose for the first time, raw and ragged. He deserves worse than I'm going to give him. Ella swung her legs off the bed, pain lancing through her ribs. Stitches pulled. She didn't care. If you kill him, you become exactly what he accused you of being. She stepped between him and the door. A monster who murders family. Mark flinched like she'd struck him. Luca deserves a father who still has a soul. Her voice cracked. Not a man drowning in blood he can't wash off. The phone slipped from his hand, clattered to the tile. He stared at her, chest heaving, eyes wet. He tried to kill my son. I know. She took his face in her hands. But if you do this, Luca loses you anyway. Just slower. Dawn. Victor was brought to the estate in zip ties, lips split, eyes swelling shut. He looked smaller without his usual smirk. Younger. Almost pitiful. Mark stood over him in the study, gun steady in his hand. You jealous piece of shit. Mark's voice was arctic. You torched my house, my son. Victor spat blood on the Persian rug. Dad always loved you more. The business, the respect, everything. It should have been mine. So you tried to kill a 5-year-old. I tried to break you. Victor's laugh was wet, broken. Worked, didn't it? Look at you. Bringing that nurse into our world. Going soft. You're not even a Burton anymore. Mark cocked the hammer. The sound is deafening in the quiet room. Say goodbye, little brother. Ella stepped between them. Again, bandages seeping red where stitches had torn, face pale as paper, but standing. Look at me, sir, she told Mark. Look at what you still have. His hand shook. Victor laughed harder. She won't save you forever. One day she'll see the blood you can't wash off and she'll run. Shut up! Ella's voice was steel. She turned back to Mark, placed her palm over his heart. If you pull that trigger, you proven him right. Her voice dropped. You lose us both. The room held its breath. Mark's finger whitened on the trigger. Luca's voice came from the doorway, small, sleepy. Daddy? Mark's eyes closed. Slowly, agonizingly, he lowered the gun. Victor sagged with relief. Mark's voice was winter incarnate. You live, but you disappear. He crouched, put the gun under Victor's chin. One whisper, one shadow near my family, and I'll bury you so deep they'll need to dig through hell to find the pieces. Victor was dragged out, still breathing. Barely. Mark collapsed onto the floor, head in his hands. Ella knelt beside him, ignoring the fire in her shoulder. I almost... His voice broke. I was going to... You didn't. She threaded her fingers through his. You chose Luca. You chose me. He looked up, eyes red, face devastated. I don't know how to be the man you think I am. Then let me show you. Outside, the sun rose over a quiet estate. No gunfire, no graves, just Luca's laughter echoing from the garden. Chasing butterflies like the world hadn't almost ended, like his father hadn't almost become a monster, like love hadn't just rewritten everything. 3 weeks later, the church was abandoned, had been for a decade. St. Catherine's on Dorchester Bay, stained glass broken, pews rotting, but the bones still stood. Victor had chosen the location. Neutral ground, he'd said through an intermediary. One last conversation before he disappeared forever. Mark should have known better. He went anyway. 11:34 p.m. Rain hammered the broken roof. Mark walked the center aisle alone, coat open, gun visible at his hip. Victor waited at the altar, hands in his pockets, flanked by 2 men Mark had already ID'd as muscle. Local thugs, not family. Mark had sent them home an hour ago with enough money to forget they'd ever been there. You wanted to talk, Mark said. Talk. Victor's smile was thin. Dad always said you were too soft for this life. Dad's dead. Because of you. Mark stopped 10 feet away. Heart attack, natural causes. While you were taking over his empire, Victor took a step down from the altar. Stress kills, doesn't it, brother? Get to the point. The point, Victor's hand moved, is that you chose a nurse over blood, over me, over everything we built. His hand emerged from his coat. Snub-nosed revolver, chrome, shaking, time fractured. Ella had followed, against every order, every warning. She'd slipped out of the estate 20 minutes after Mark left, took his backup car, drove through rain that turned the world into watercolor. She'd watched too many people she loved walk into danger alone. Not this time. She entered through the side door, silent as smoke, saw Victor's hand, saw the gun, saw Mark's finger tightening on his own trigger, saw the future collapsing into one terrible moment. She ran. No! Her scream echoed off broken stone as she threw herself between them. The gunshot was everything. Pain exploded in her chest, white-hot, absolute, stealing breath and thought, and everything except the knowledge that she was falling. She hit the floor. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't see. Just pain. Mark roared, something inhuman ripping from his throat as he raised his gun. 2 shots. Center mass. Perfect grouping. Victor flew backward into the altar, cross crashing down on his corpse. Silence swallowed the church. Mark dropped to his knees. The gun clattered away, forgotten. He gathered Ella against him, hands slick with her blood. Stay with me. His voice broke. Ella, look at me. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, glassy. Blood stained her teeth when she tried to smile. You promised? Each word cost her. Stop fighting. Ghosts. Her hand slipped from his cheek, leaving a crimson print. No. He grabbed her hand, pressed it back to his face. No, 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 you don't get to. You can't. Her eyes closed. Mark screamed her name. Raw, broken, the sound of a man shattering. He lifted her, cradled her like something holy and ran. Out into the rain. Down the church steps, blood washing red across stone. His men stood frozen as he carried her past, Ella limp in his arms, pulse fluttering weak against his neck. He didn't look back at the body on the altar. Didn't care. Victor was dead, and Ella was dying, and nothing else in the world mattered. In the SUV, he held her against his chest, rocking, lips pressed to her forehead. Don't leave me. His voice was wrecked. After everything, I need you. Luca needs you. Please. Sirens wailed closer. He didn't hear them. Just her shallow, wet breathing and the roar in his own ears. The woman who'd saved his son twice, saved him a dozen times, had just taken a bullet meant for his heart. And Mark Burton, feared by half the eastern seaboard, broke completely, begging the universe for one more miracle. If you're crying, I'm crying. Hit like so we can cry together. Subscribe because if Ella dies, I'm burning this whole story down and you need to be there. Comment, one word, live, or I can't even type the alternative. Share this if your heart just shattered into pieces, one part left, just one, and I don't know if I can do this. White ceiling tiles, that was the first thing Ella saw. Then steady beeping, antiseptic smell, starched sheets, hospital. Pain lived in her chest like a second heartbeat, sharp, insistent. But there, stem. Alive meant pain. She'd take it. Mark was there, still in the blood-stiff shirt from the church, still in the chair beside her bed, folded forward. One hand wrapped around hers like letting go would undo everything. He'd aged a decade in however long she'd been under. Stubble darkened his jaw. Bruises of exhaustion ringed his eyes. His other hand still had her blood under the nails. She squeezed his fingers. His head jerked up. Ella. Her name cracked in his throat like a prayer answered. He pressed his forehead to their joined hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. You're here, she tried to speak. Her throat was sandpaper. He was already moving. Water, straw, hand gentle on the back of her head. Small sips. The water was heaven. How long? Her voice came out ruined. 4 days. He set the cup down with trembling hands. You coded twice. The bullet missed your heart by... His voice broke. By centimeters. The days blurred together. Mark never left. He fed her ice chips when her throat was too raw for water. Read Luca's crayon drawings aloud. This is you and me and Daddy, and we're all holding hands, and there's a rainbow and nobody is bleeding. When the pain meds wore off and the nightmares came, Victor's gun, the muzzle flash, the sensation of falling, Mark held her through it, murmuring against her hair, "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." Day 7, the doctors cleared her for discharge. Mark stood at the window, city lights glittering below. "I'm done," he said quietly. Ella's heart stuttered. "Done with what?" "All of it." He turned. His eyes were clear for the first time since she'd met him. "No more blood, no more bodies. The empire goes legitimate, security consulting, real estate, whatever keeps Luca safe and you breathing." He crossed to her bed, knelt so they were eye level. "I'm selling the guns, burning the ledgers, cutting ties with anyone who can't go clean." His hand found hers, "Starting tonight. And if someone comes for what's left, then they meet a man who's got more to lose than they can imagine." His thumb brushed her knuckles. "I choose you over vengeance." Every single day, she studied his face, the man who'd killed his own brother, who'd built an empire on fear, who'd broken himself open trying to save her. "What about the people who won't let you walk away?" His smile was tired. "Let them trim." 3 months later, the new mansion rose on the same hill, but different, lighter, pale stone instead of dark brick, windows that had never known fire, gardens that Luca could run through without fear. Ella sat on the balcony, summer sun warm on her face, watching Luca chase butterflies across grass so green it didn't look real. The scar on her chest was silver now, faded but permanent. She traced it sometimes, remembering. Arms slid around her waist from behind. Mark's chin rested on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts." She leaned back into him. "Thinking about how close we came to losing this." "Every day." His voice was soft. "Every day I wake up grateful I got a second chance." She turned in his arms, fingers tracing the new lines around his eyes. Earned from sleepless nights, dismantling an empire brick by brick, from learning to be a father instead of a kingpin. "I'm not your property," she said, gentle but firm. "Never were." He pressed his lips to the scar above her heart. "You're the partner who pulled me out of hell, who stayed when anyone sane would have run." "Daddy! Ella!" Luca barreled into them, arms wide. Group hug. They folded him in, 3 hearts beating in the same sunlight. Below, Boston kept moving. Old enemies whispered in corners. Debts still existed. The Burton name still carried weight. But up here, things were different. Mark had kept his promise. Clean businesses, legal money, no midnight meetings with men in dark coats. Some of his old associates had tested him. Once, they'd learned that a man protecting his family was more dangerous than one protecting an empire. Luca pulled back, grass-stained and grinning. "Ella, will you marry Daddy?" She choked on air. Mark's arms tightened fractionally. "Luca," she started, "because you're already family, and you live here, and Daddy looks at you the way Prince Philip looks at Princess Aurora, and they got married, so—" "Buddy," Mark interrupted, voice strained, "that's a grown-up conversation." "Is the answer no?" Luca's eyes went wide, devastated. Ella looked at Mark. He looked back, something vulnerable and terrified in his expression. "It's not no," she said slowly. Luca lit up. "So it's yes?" "It's—" She glanced at Mark. His hand found hers, squeezed. "It's we'll see." "That's basically yes." Luca whooped and ran off, already yelling about being the ring bearer. Silence settled between them. Mark cleared his throat. "I didn't put him up to that. I know. But if the question ever came up," he turned her to face him. "Hypothetically, Mark, I'd want you to know that you saved more than my son." His voice dropped. "You saved me, and I'd spend the rest of my life proving I was worth it." Her breath caught. "That's not a proposal," he added quickly. "Just information, for future reference." She smiled, slow and dangerous. "Good, because when you propose, it better be more romantic than a 5-year-old telling you to." His laugh was surprised and bright. "Noted." That night, after Luca was asleep, they sat on the balcony under a sky full of stars. Ella's head rested on Mark's shoulder. His arm was around her waist. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the empire?" "No. no hesitation. I regret the years I wasted building it instead of this. Below, the lights of Boston glittered like promises. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then silenced it without reading the message. Old contact? Ella asked. Old life. He tossed the phone onto the side table. Not interested. She kissed his jaw, soft and slow. I love you, she said. Simple. True. He went still, then his arms tightened around her, face buried in her hair. I love you. His voice was wrecked. God, Ella, I love you so much, it terrifies me. They stayed like that as the city lights blurred below, and Luca dreamed safe dreams inside. A family built from fire and blood and choices that rewrote everything. Broken people, healing slowly, together. If this ending just healed something in your soul, smash that like button. We all need this hope. Subscribe because broken people can find happy endings, and this family proved it. Comment, one word, forever or family? Trick question? The answer is both. Share this with someone who needs to believe that love can rewrite even the darkest story. Thank you for staying, for believing, for walking through fire with Ella and Mark and Luca. This is their happily ever after. They earned it.